Existence and living a full life are two distinct concepts. Existing simply means being alive, while living a full life means experiencing a range of emotions, pursuing interests, forming meaningful connections with others, and finding purpose and fulfillment in daily experiences. Many people may go through life simply existing, going through the motions without actively engaging with the world around them. Mere existence can easily lead to dissatisfaction, boredom, and existential meaninglessness. Christina Marrero was right when she said, "Better to have lived in truth and discovered life than to have lived half-heartedly and died long before you ever ceased breathing." Living a full life means taking risks, stepping outside of your usual zone, and actively pursuing your interests and everything that makes you come alive. It requires a willingness to embrace the unpredictability of life. At the same time, living a whole life does not necessarily mean constantly seeking new experiences or achieving a certain level of success. It's about finding a sense of purpose and meaning that resonates with one's values and personal aspirations. Half a life is not good enough. Spending the rest of your days living. Half a life is hard, says Eric Worre. So make a life. Identifying your values and beliefs is the first step to making a good life. What is important to you? What do you stand for? What part of you have you neglected but still means a lot to you? Once you clearly understand what you need, no matter how small, you can start taking actionable steps that align with them. That means doing more for your career, relationships, health, and personal growth to bring out the best in you. By intentionally creating a life that aligns with your values and aspirations, you can experience a sense of purpose, fulfillment, and joy. You will instinctively and involuntarily react. You will consciously respond. We've all seen action movies where the protagonist calmly walks away from an explosion in slow motion without looking back, or they catch a punch without flinching, or face down hundreds of bad guys with a steady heart rate and a smug face. This is great in movies. It's not so good in real life. You flinch to protect yourself. You jump at loud noises to make sure you're alert to danger, and your eyes widen to ensure you're seeing as much of the threat as possible. Try and remember the last time something made you jump. It might have been that horror movie your friend made you watch, a car stopping suddenly in front of you, or simply catching a reflection of yourself too early in the morning. That initial jump is reflexive. It's your body's instinctive response to a potential threat. It is possible for you to lessen a specific response through constant exposure, but it requires training. This is because your sympathetic nervous system hijacks your body to protect you from harm. It does this because it's fast. It's much faster than if you were to consciously think about the danger and then make the decision to move. Fast is safe. They were viewed as an indifferent and natural response to potential danger. Nothing for you to be embarrassed about and nothing to be fought. Your second response is more complex. It's conscious and it's based on your values, beliefs, and experiences. The second response is how you decide to react after your initial hijacking. That decision will be based on your character. The second response is where philosophy will help you live a better life. Practical philosophy can help us to see the world in different ways. In doing so, we will make different choices. This is where I'll focus this discussion. Some time ago, a Stoic philosopher boarded the deck of a ship with a number of his students bound for Brundisium in southern Italy. After their first day at sea, as the sun set, rough waves began to beat against the boat's wooden hull, and it rocked violently in the turning weather. In the dark of night, a violent storm met them on the open water. It tossed the ship in the wind as it began to slowly fill with water. To the men and women on board, it was clear that the boat was at risk of sinking. Many of them began to cry and moan, believing that they wouldn't make it through the storm to see the morning. During this time, the Stoic philosopher had turned pale, gripped by fear, just like the others. However, he did not wail or moan. He remained silent, holding his students safe and in control. When the storm had passed, one of the travelers approached the Stoic and asked the reason for his fear. After all, if he was such a good philosopher, surely he would have the ability to master his fear of the storm. The Stoic handed the man a copy of Epictetus, work the 5th book of the Discourses, and instructed him to read it. The mental visions which the philosophers call impressions or fantasies, by which the mind of man on the very first appearance of an object is impelled to the perception of the object, are neither voluntary nor controlled by the will, but through a certain power of their own they force their recognition upon men, but the expressions of assent, which they call, by which these visions are recognized, are voluntary and subject to man's will. Therefore, when some terrifying sound, either from heaven or from a falling building, or as a sudden announcement of some danger or anything else of that kind occurs, even the mind of a wise man must necessarily be disturbed, must shrink and feel alarm, not from a preconceived idea of any danger, but from certain swift and unexpected attacks which forestall the power of the mind and of reason. Presently, however, the wise man does not approve such fantasies, that is to say, such terrifying mental visions, to quote the Greek. He does not consent to them nor confirm them, but he rejects and scorns them, nor does he see in them anything that ought to excite fear. And they say that there is this difference between the mind of a foolish man and that of a wise man, that the foolish man thinks that such visions are in fact as dreadful and terrifying as they appear at the original impact of them on his mind, and by his assent he approves of such ideas as if they were rightly to be feared, and confirms them, for is the word which the Stoics use in their discourses on the subject. But the wise man, after being affected for a short time and slightly in his color and expression, does not assent, but retains the steadfastness and strength of the opinion which he has always had about visions of this kind, namely that they are in no wise to be feared, but excite terror by a false appearance and vain alarms. We will experience sudden and involuntary reactions to external events. Epictetus says even the mind of a wise man must necessarily be disturbed. We shouldn't feel guilty about this. These involuntary actions are what the Stoics called propathei. It is not a realistic expectation to avoid these kinds of responses. They exist to keep us from harm. They are in our nature. After our initial involuntary response, we have the ability to see the situation more logically. In this space, we are given a choice. The choice to decide how we respond. Epictetus explains that the difference between the wise man and the fool is found in this space between stimulus and response. Where the fool is overcome by the initial impact of the situation, the wise man is able to look at it objectively and understand that it is not wise to be terrified by vain alarms work. And the story of the Stoic at sea show us that sudden fright and fear is natural and expected. However, the differences between people lie in how we respond after that moment of fright has passed. Are we the fool who allows fear to fill us like the water of the ship, or the wise man who looks at things objectively and sees them for what they are? They are gripped by the initial threat. This is seen as natural in the face of something life-threatening or dangerous. It is accepted as part of being human. It brings no shame or embarrassment. They look at the situation for what it is, rather than what their fear is telling them it is. What can be done about the situation? How dangerous is it really? What is within our control that we can leverage to improve the conditions? When we perceive danger, when experience sudden anger, when we are shocked, if something makes us jump, etc. Premeditatio malorum can be roughly translated from Latin as the premeditation of evils. I know this can sound pretty grim, but bear with me. As we learn more and more about Stoicism and begin to practice our own Stoic philosophy, it's essential to look more deeply into its practices to understand if we can adopt them into our own routine. As we'll come to learn, despite its dark translation, premeditatio malorum can help us prepare for potential hardship and allow us to remain calm and resilient in the face of adversity. By the end of your reading, I hope you'll have a powerful tool to add to your Stoic practice. The loss of a possession, a relationship, or a loved one. Financial trouble, conflicts with people in your personal life or at work, hard decisions that need to be made in the future. The goal of the practice isn't to prematurely or unnecessarily make us feel pain or sadness. Put ourselves in positions of hardship so that we can better react to them when or if they do occur. Practice seems to have taken root in the work of Roman Stoic philosophers. The three most prominent Stoics, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, the visualization of potential hardship as a method of building emotional resilience and mental fortitude. What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. The fact that it was unforeseen has never failed to intensify a person's grief. This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events.